In the semi-darkness of a rich old house with high ceilings and dense stone walls, a young and beautiful girl holds a baby with beautiful blue eyes like the mother's. Everything in the room indicates that this world is very far from earthly civilization. Even the light under the ceiling and on the walls comes from old wax candles. The mother looks fondly at her child, not even realizing that in his past life he was an unfortunate orphan who died of exhaustion from hard work. In 3 years, the little boy had grown up and was able to climb up to the window to survey his new, previously unlike anything else in the world. He was so enraptured by the view that he didn't notice the excited maid running into the room and gently taking the baby off the windowsill. The adventure was over. It turns out the protagonist was reborn, not just in another world. His family was a famous duchy in the kingdom of Lionheart, and he himself turned out to be the rightful heir to the Great Duke of Draconia. At the age of 8, he begins to learn swordsmanship because he is the future knight of the kingdom, and his mentor, sent from the royal palace, becomes the holy knight Godric. The protagonist is already 14, and his harsh training with Godric is getting tougher and tougher. After all, to become a holy knight requires not only combat experience and glory, but also the recognition of the Holy Grail. In addition, the young man must also become worthy of the title of Grand Duke. When our hero was 35 years old, in the kingdom during a battle with an imperial demon, the holy demigod Arsene Majesty Leonhardt dies. Now a new holy knight must be chosen to replace the king. And the great goddess has descended to point to the protagonist and entrust him with the symbol of honor and conviction, the sacred treasure Lionheart. Our hero, Leon Dragonia, accepts his new role with honor and vows to protect the Holy Grail along with the kingdom. Thus, he becomes the ruler of the kingdom of Leonheart. 45 years have passed. The protagonist is still as young and full of vigor. During this time, there have been 3 great wars with orcs, and one of the goblins evolved into a great demon. And in the Empire, a faction of dark magic is conducting pagan experiments. After 10 years, a maddened emperor commits suicide, along with 3 million citizens, for the sake of summoning the Lord of Chaos to the capital. So Leon Dragonia gathers all the knights and goes to the Empire. 121 years since the birth of the protagonist. Despite endless battles with evil, the world plunged into chaos, and even the gods could not help to protect the peace of the kingdom. Battles come one after another. People in fear of the future are already losing hope for peace and well-being. Women comfort their children, swallowing tears, while the younger generation tries to hold the fading flame of resistance in their hands. And knights try to plant seeds of hope on the blood-soaked wastelands. That winter, a decisive battle was fought against the hordes of demons that had overrun the land. Barbarian slaves were used as human shields, and many warriors of freedom and knights of glory died with honor. Only the chosen of the gods remained alive and continued to crush the demons in his path. In endless battles against demons passed long years, and now the protagonist destroyed the last demonic gate. Now they have nowhere to run to. The year 300. Leon Dragonia chops a great demon to pieces with a mighty swing of his sword. Just then, he meets a group of people who have arrived from a magical portal. They marvel at his power and bravery and want to know his name. I am the ruler of Leonheart, king of valiant knights and a man who does God's will. Leon Dragonia Lionheart. This is how he finally met the Earthlings. A black level gate opens in the center of Seoul. The degree of difficulty could not be determined. The World and Korean Hunter Organization requested the major guilds to intervene, but all refused. The Korean government then ordered their association to step in first, which was tantamount to suicide. In total obscurity, they stepped through the portal and came face to face with a bloody and naked swordsman standing alone among hundreds of demonic corpses. A little later, in the Korean Hunters Organization, Han Hari's guild deputy and Kim Jinsu, the guild head, prepare a report on the investigation of the portal. It turned out to be a black-level demonic gate with a great demon behind it. And still, the members can't believe that after meeting with the demons, they were able to survive without the support of the guild, and even mopped up all the demons, only thanks to an unknown swordsman, who is now sitting in their interrogation room. This isn't the first time the organization has seen something like this. Time after time, over the past 30 years, portals from other worlds have appeared on Earth. What they all have in common is rapid destruction or the end of the world. But sometimes, from the demon world, survivors have come to Earth. In doing so, they retain the incredible power that they possessed in the former world. Therefore, the government was interested in meeting all the needs of the survivors. After all, they could then be recruited according to their needs in the future. So now Han, Hari, and Chinsu, represented by the Korean Hunter Organization, have to get the swordsmen on their side at all costs. Even A-rank hunters have to risk their lives when fighting advanced-level demons. And this guy slaughtered a great demon with a single swing of his sword, a demon that even S-rank hunters are afraid of. While the hunters are discussing possible cultural differences, the interrogation room erupts into a furious scream from the protagonist, causing the armor-piercing glass to shatter. And all because now Leon Dragonia, after 300 years in another world, is back on Earth, where he was a tortured laborer and for the time being has decided not to reveal the secret of his past, pretending to be the true king of another dimension. So when he was served a commoner's lunch, it was necessary to show the true rage of an offended lord to maintain his status. After all, no matter what he returned to Earth, the protagonist would still remain a Night King. After the protagonist kicks the manager out, Han Hari goes to him to recruit him to the Korean Hunter Association at all costs. During the conversation, Leon declares that he is ready to fight demons, but only after he has his own personal squad in this world, performing under his own flag. And Hari had no choice but to nod. After the conversation, she returns to the room where guild leader Kim Jinsu was waiting for her. He says that the government will provide all necessary support to the survivor. Suddenly, a notification arrives on her phone about the breakthrough of the Hanam Plain dungeon. This causes serious concern, as there is a granary there and food production may be halted due to the monsters. But what is more resentful is that there is a Phoenix Guild with S-rank hunters at the helm in charge of this dungeon. There's no way that such skilled hunters can't close the Orange Gate. Leon heard all the sounds coming from behind the door and couldn't remain indifferent to the trouble going on, because if there is a dungeon breach, the earth will be polluted and crops will stop growing. He makes a wave of his hand, and a marvelous golden glow appears around his palm, as if he wants to invoke a deity. Leader Kim and Hari arrive on the Hanam Plain. There they are greeted by the Phoenix Guild and its head, Lee Yanwan. We see how arrogant and condescending they are towards the hunters from the association, and they look more funded than the government officials. Kim Jinsu is furious as he realizes that the guild allowed the breach on purpose. All year long, Phoenix has been begging the government for tax exemptions on the income generated inside the gate in the form of magical artifacts, crystals, and monsters. And now they are willing to blackmail everyone with a gate breach just so they can be exempted from paying the 1 trillion won tax again. Han Hari confronts the guild leader Yan Wang and reminds him that if a little more time passes, the gate will be transferred to another guild. The Phoenix leader sneeringly states that their guild is badly damaged and can hardly manage it in 24 hours. Their quarrel continues, but suddenly it is interrupted by Leon Dragonia, who came out of the helicopter. With a few pathetic speeches, he puts Lee Young-wan in his place, which the latter first prepares to fight, but Hari warns him that he's a survivor. Yang-wang respectfully apologizes. Meanwhile, Hari reports the situation to Leon. When the dungeon is breached, a lot of monsters burst out and pollute the land, causing crops to stop growing on it, and the Hanam Plain is an important place for growing grain. Therefore, it is necessary to clean up the pollution and destroy the dungeon. In response to this, Leon commands her to gather her strength and get ready, because tomorrow the king will make a personal appearance. But before that, he needs the president's permission, because the king of another country cannot arbitrarily conduct military action in another country's territory, which makes Han Hari and Lee Youngwon fall out. In the end, the president received a phone call. Before speaking, Leon requested two things. The first was a straw doll, and the second was that it be made by a woman who had given birth to a child. So an exhibition of straw dolls was held on the Hanam plain. But none of them pleased the protagonist. Each one he criticized and turned into dust. Only one 89-year-old woman was able to make a truly beautiful straw doll. No wonder, because she has given birth to as many as 12 children. Leon Dragonia sincerely thanked her for her labor and tenderly kissed her hand. Together with the hunters, the protagonist returns to the field. Now all the conditions are met. He puts the book on the table and with a slight wave of his hand calls a magical portal from which he takes out a precious goblet. Reading the spell, he directs the energy from his palm directly into it. And suddenly the cup itself fills with water. Then water by drops rises into the air, while shining like the sun itself. Gathering into jets and penetrating inside the doll, the hunters look on in amazement. And now, before everyone's eyes, the doll stands on its feet and comes to life, and the protagonist bows before it and greets the Mother of the Earth. In front of him in the image of the doll stood the goddess of life and fertility, Demera. This is how the deity descended to this land. Goddess Demera greets her subject, and the protagonist tells her that the earth is polluted because of demons. But there is no deity in this world to heal it, and so he also apologizes that inferior and vulgar creatures can taint her eyes. While saying the phrase, he openly looks at Lee Youngwang. But the goddess gently replies that ignorance and greed are only part of human nature. The protagonist then promises her to see to it that duty and power are on equal footing on this earth, and all ignoramuses will be guided to the right path until this world forms its own pantheon. Leon then prays to the goddess for help in healing this land. Demeter spreads her divinity and fills the depleted earth with her noble flesh. Immediately, the entire field is illuminated with a warm golden light, and the crops are filled with life and vigor. Everyone present is shocked at what is happening. But Lee Yongwang is the first to realize which way the wind has changed, and that now all his plans to avoid taxes will soon come to an end, unless he comes up with something new. Then he declares that this magic will make the rice grow poisonous. Leon is quietly furious at this statement and threateningly warns Yongwang not to dare to defame the goddess with his trashy tongue. Then Guildmaster Phoenix has nothing to do but try to accuse the protagonist of fraud and offers a master from his guild to evaluate the quality of the crop. The latter applies a spell and can't believe his eyes. Ordinary rice has acquired a rare rank and is now able to cure third-level diseases, and even cancer. After this news, the team quickly boils the harvested rice. A card with a description of the characteristics of the dish appears. Rice made from the blessed rice plant. Stamina recovery rate increases by 100 every minute and mana by 50. The duration is 8 hours. The association now has rice in its hands, which is the equivalent of an expensive potion costing 3 million won per bottle. Also, Hari experientially learns that if you eat an insect from the Blessed Land, you can get a buff. After that, a group of hunters from the association excitedly rushes to collect as many insects as possible to go to the gate with special enhancements. Meanwhile, Demeter says goodbye to the protagonist, and the straw doll falls lifelessly to the table. The association team, led by Leon, is ready to move out to mop up the gate. Lee Yongwang hopes that the protagonist is actually a normal blessing-type buffer and will die in the dungeon when the battle begins. A team of hunters from the association advances inside a cold and gloomy dungeon. Defeated skeletons lie everywhere. Hari explains to the protagonist that in order to mop up, you need to either defeat the boss or complete a quest. And in this case, monsters will appear as long as their leader is alive. Leon quite notes that a duel with the boss sounds like a good idea. Meanwhile, all participants receive a red notice, the start of the dungeon breakthrough. Now they must kill the Night Warlord Dullahan in 3 hours to survive. An army of zombie skeletons appears out of nowhere with a powerful knight in iron armor holding his head in his left hand. The hunters tense up in earnest, but do not lose their formation. They immediately distribute potions and tasks among themselves. Archers take on spellcasters and long-range skeletons, while tanks with shields step forward and hold back the wave of zombies. But despite all their efforts, the enemy outnumbers them in strength and numbers. And in the squad, only Han Hari is rank A. Meanwhile, Dullahan gets close to Kim Chin-soo and delivers a lightning-fast sword strike, throwing the man into a rocky cliff face. The reserve forces fly in to support their leader, and Hari asks the protagonist for help. But he only exclaims piteously that the king should not be involved in such a small battle. Realizing that there is no one else to rely on, Hari decides to take a personal stand against the boss. In a few leaps, she closes the distance with Dullahan and delivers a series of deft sword strikes. But the Night Warlord proves to be more agile and delivers a strong blow to Hari's deputy, which she skillfully blocks. Now they are separated from the rest of the team, and the deputy can finally unleash her full power. The thin blade cleaves the air and delivers a solid blow to the opponent. But the next Dullahan blocks already strikes his response to Deputy Hari, driving her into the ground. But then Leon's voice comes from the sidelines. He recognizes in Dullahan not just an undead, but a great knight, and is now ready to fight him one-on-one. And who would have thought it would work? Accepting the challenge, Dullahan rushes over. Leon asks him to release his other arm so that the duel is on equal footing, and the warlord gives his head to the skeleton. Hari suggests to the protagonist that to defeat Dullahan, you have to cut off his head. But it seems that the protagonist is not bothered by this. He is sure that the winner is determined by the honor of the knight. A magical portal appears again, from which Leon Dragonia draws a long and sharp blade. Dullahan attacks first, but the protagonist has no trouble blocking and reflecting his powerful blow. Time after time, the huge knight delivers his strongest blows on Leon, but he does not even move from his seat. He only counts every touch of his blade to the place where his opponent's head should be. Then the duel begins again. It had been many years since someone had treated Dullahan as a knight and challenged him to a duel in a dignified manner. So he had refused to use necromancy, and they had come together like two knights, sword to sword. The nobility he read in the stance and the glittering eyes that held a thirst for honor and glory commanded the necromancer knight's respect. To Dullahan, he had become the pinnacle of a knight's honorability, a king to be revered and challenged. More and more memories of former battles with similarly valiant warriors awoke in the warlord's heart. And when his sword jingled aside after another attack, Leon Dragonia touched his neck with his blade for the 10th time. "Will you continue, knight?" asked Leon of him. But instead of answering, Dullahan stood silently and walked towards his head. He thought about how long he had fought without honor, and if he could end his cursed journey now, it would be the ultimate joy for him. Getting down on one knee in front of the protagonist, he held out his head to him, wanting to accept death. But in response, Leon only placed his hand on it with the words, "I am glad that you have finally regained your honor. I will pray for you, and one day we will meet again in the feast hall of the gods, great knight." The whole space near the main character was filled with noble golden light, and when he said, "Let there be light," the curse together with the armor began to disappear, revealing the bright face of the warrior, which after a while also began to melt in the air, along with his whole body.
Outside the dungeon, Hari and Kim are speculating about the power Leon just demonstrated to them. Why didn't he use his divine power right away? The deputy was perplexed. A reply sounded from behind them. Then, this honorable knight would have met his end as a necromancer. But a knight lives for honor. Honor comes from action, and action comes from will. And Dullahan got what he deserved as an honorable knight. After saying that, he resolutely walked towards the place where the bounty that had fallen out of the dungeon lay. They were the Dullahan cloak, the Great Sword of Dullahan, the Necromancer's Pearl, the Mana Stones, and so on. Kim and Hari immediately marveled at the pearl, for it looked like it contained a huge amount of mana and would sell for a decent amount of money. Trash, the protagonist utters, and with a single kick of his foot shatters the pearl into dust. Everyone present glazes over with shock. Such things only cause chaos, he explains. This is how the gates of Hanam were protected. 4 days have passed since the protagonist returned to Earth. It was not an easy time for Deputy Commander Han Hari. After closing the dungeon, the question of paying taxes on the reward arose, to which Leon indignantly said that the king should not count his coins, it should be done by his servants. Then the taxation of the divine lands had to be solved. At first, the farmers were puzzled by Leon's tax of 90% of the income from rice sales. But it was worth explaining to them that the crop was now tens of thousands of times more expensive, and even that 10% was many times their previous income. So the first followers appeared on the divine land, but the main problem was to find suitable housing for the protagonist. None of the modern apartments could please his requirements. He fiercely demanded a luxurious bed, servants who would always be around, and a picture that he could admire at any moment. Poor Hari had to search for a room in a 5-star hotel until 2 a.m. So they came to a compromise, in the form of a painting or a vase in the room. Hari takes a deep breath and cheerfully brings his royal breakfast into Leon's room. "Have you eaten yet?" asks her protagonist, and hearing a negative answer, continues, "You have to eat while you can. You shouldn't skip meals." She takes the lids off the sumptuous dishes one by one, and already in her head she is imagining how she will eat a tuna sandwich later. "Proceed," Leon tells her. The girl does not believe such generosity, and embarrassedly sits down at the table, opposite him. But in fact, everything turned out quite differently. The main character did not offer her to share the meal at all, but only commanded her to start preparing food for the reception. After breakfast, from the hotel they went to check into the accommodations that the association had found for them. These apartments looked truly luxurious. Most importantly, they were right next to the association and had a helipad on the roof. All this was kept top secret, so when a tall man in an elegant suit was waiting for them in the lobby, Hari was seriously wary. He introduced himself, "I'm the director of the Food of the Future Dojin Company Dojin Group, Park John-chan." Hari realizes that the director of such a giant company couldn't just happen to be here by chance, but what does he want? Chan extends his palm to the protagonist as a handshake, but the latter grimaces and exclaims, "A pathetic peddler wants to shake my hand?" After these words, they retire to the apartments, leaving John-chan alone. Later we realize that the director of the Doju group has come for a reason. His sources have already told him about the divine rice that cures even cancer, and like a true businessman, he decides to get his hands on it by all means. His employees are already conducting tests on rats, and a farmer's dog that was near death is completely cured before their eyes. So Chan comes up with a new plan to gain the survivors' trust. Upon returning to Earth, Leon set 3 goals for himself. The first, to spread faith in divinity. There are many gods and their followers on Earth, but the most important thing, divine power, does not exist here. The god is supposed to accept people's faith and bless the earth. But instead, people get sick and the earth gets polluted. So in order to utilize the divine power, a new faith is needed. Therefore, it is necessary for more people to believe in a new god. The second thing is to recreate the shrine army. In this world, there are no organizations of fighters using divine power. And while the keeper of the Holy Grail, King Lenhart, is considered a demigod, the knights of the shrines are saints. They are knights of the gods using divine power. And the third, to destroy all the evil thriving on this earth. This is what the protagonist was thinking about now, looking out of the window of his aports and leisurely sipping red wine. At that moment, Hari informs him that someone has requested an official meeting with him. And now they are expecting guests at their place. Once again, it was the director of the Dojin groups, Park Jan-chan. This time, he came bearing gifts. In his plans, he was going to wow the surviving savage with a first-class item to get Leon on the hook to become his personal manager. Inside the crate were the most elite blades that the Dojin Group company prides itself on. These are first-class weapons that money can't even buy. But despite his efforts in response, the protagonist once again indignantly exclaimed, "And where do you think I should use this low-rank weapon?" At such words, Hari and Chan were paralyzed with shock, and Leon explained to them in a moralizing manner that good weapons couldn't be made without the aura of stars or holy blessings. Your blades are only good for killing chickens and cows, but since you're a merchant and it's your job to flaunt your wares wherever you go, I'll still give it a try. And with those words, he pulls his legendary blade out of the air and commands Hari to choose any of the weapons on display to her liking and test them out. The girl then takes the sword she has been admiring for the past few years. Master Park Jin-ho's sword is the Dawn Sword. Holding it in her hands, she feels the powerful force that emanates from the blade. During all the preparations, Leon can't stop making caustic comments about the weapon, disparaging Yung Chan over and over again. Hari draws her blade and strikes Leon's sword with all her might. And then, her blade shatters against the noble sword like a cheap glass toy. Everyone but the protagonist is shocked. He summarizes that this weapon is even worse than he thought, and demands that Chan state in a nutshell what he wants from it. The latter, still not quite recovered after his company's best weapon has just been destroyed, directly states that he wants the patent rights to the rice paddies. But the unfortunate man still thinks that he is an ordinary savage who can be easily bought with a tidy sum of money. Which, moreover, is an order of magnitude less than the real value of the field. He already decides that the protagonist has fallen for his bait, as Leon insults him again, "Inferior merchant. How dare you insult my deity?" In front of Park Chan's face arose all the lion-like rage of the protagonist. He was ready to die of fear. Leon, on the other hand, goes on to say that this blessing was given as a reward to the farmers who sweated and labored in the fields. This is not something that money can buy. A grateful heart and faith is what is required as payment. After explaining, he humiliates Park Chan again and finally asks, "Why do you want to possess the divine resources of a goddess you don't believe in?" After such a total debacle, Park Chan and his aides hurriedly leave. And Hari worries whether he should have just let them go. But Leon is completely calm, because such a lowlife cannot affect him in any way. Now it is more important for him to find his future sacred knights. To do this, they go to the association, and something else strange in a convolution holds in his hands Hari. At the Hunters Association, we are shown a stout man who has come to take an exam to raise his level. This is an independent D-rank hunter, Gu Dae-sung. He greets an older man, the manager of the miners team, named Kim Do-han. Together, they discuss jobs and qualifications, and in between, Kim Do-han invites Gu Dae-sung to join him, promising that he'll quickly become an ace on the team. But the hunter has other plans for his life. Even though not even the most talented fighters reach C rank, Gu Dae-sung has been unable to reach that level for the past 10 years. It's a necessity for him, as he has a family to support. Suddenly, they notice a tall stranger with European appearance and decide that he's also here for the exam. The manager hurries to greet the young man, but he blows the old man away in a rude manner. His gaze lingers on Gu Dae-seong. Gu Dae-seong's breath is taken away by the unknown power he senses from the stranger. Meanwhile, Leon is discouraged to realize that only low-ranked hunters and newly awakened hunters come here to take tests. At this point, he is summoned to room 9 to take the test. Inside he is greeted by 3 men, and explained that at this point they will analyze his abilities. Of course again, this is not without the standard arrogance on Leon's part, and at the suggestion that he put his hand on the measuring device to assess his abilities, he again loses his temper. "Fool, how dare a peasant try to test a knight's honor?" The agitated man assures him that the gauge will take care of all the calculations, but it doesn't save the situation. Crossing his arms over his chest, the protagonist continues to yell at him, "How dare a mere machine measure the strength of a knight? Only noble knights and gods can do that." The confused men ask why he came then, to which Leon openly replies that he is here to seek soldiers for himself, but even the judges here are insignificant. Annoyed, he moves on to the next challenge. The gates of Seoul. Cleansed gates usually become closed gates, but some are left for situations like this. We see Gu Dae-seong again. Besides him, we see two newcomers, a guy with a spear and shield and a girl archer. A chill old man and that weird European guy from the lobby. Based on that, Gu Dae-sung decides that this guy is also a newcomer. Will everything be okay? The first to begin introductions was Ji Da-sun. I'm in my 10th year as a hunter and my class is warrior. My main position is mediator. The guy and girl turned out to be brother and sister. Tae-hong had awakened this year and fights with a spear and shield. And his sister, Shin Naeun, uses daggers and is just mastering the bow. Da-sun starts to get even more nervous, and to take away the fear, asks the guys if they've been to training centers before. We trained at one, for 3 months. They exclaim proudly. They're complete profane, thinks Da-sun. The chill grandpa's name is Kong Tae. He tells them that he fights with gloves, that he awakened a long time ago and has been working for 5 years. Ji Da-sung sweats even more. The grandfather's experience is too little in relation to his age. Besides, with the gloves, you can't keep a distance like you can with a bow or spear. Finally, Da-sun turns to Leon and says, "Foreign mercenary, do you speak Korean?" Leon squints a complicated face, and emotionlessly utters, "I don't fight. It's not proper to use a sword that can slay a dragon to hunt chickens." After these words, Da-sun is defeated. They advance deep into the location. For the test you need to kill 50 kobolds, the instructor informs the team. Also he specifies that sometimes gnolls may appear on the battlefield. And if he considers them very dangerous, he will intervene and help. During this time Da-sun is not over anxious, and he cannot get out of his mind the moment at the start, which happened to this strange foreigner. He took no weapon with him to the gate, and when Naeun offered him her bow, he took it in his hands with contempt and said, "Do you want the king to use this?" And then his face darkened with indignation. A knight is not supposed to use a ranged weapon. "I'm not a coward." And with those words, he threw the bow to the ground with all his might. The team went numb with shock. In order to pass the test for sure, Da-sun proposes to go the way he already knows. The team supports him. His plan includes hunting the kobolds in the caves. They must spread dry grass at the entrance and set it on fire, thus smoking them out of the caves. Tae-hun and Naeun marvel at his idea, to which Da-sun waves it off with a smile. But such tactics are nothing to be proud of, he reasons. He's been studying all manner of manuals and battle techniques, in hopes that someday he'll be able to enter the high-ranking gate. But for now, the blue level is his maximum, so he intends to get promoted this time around at all costs. Suddenly, they encounter a group of kobolds. Tae-hong, block their attacks with your shield, Da-sun commands, pulling out his sword. The kobold wolf men attack head-on, and Tae-hoon easily manages to hit one of them. He is so pleased with his victory that he doesn't notice the next one attacking him. Naeun screams to warn his brother, but Da-sun comes to his aid just in time. He mortally wounds the kobold with one blow, and addresses the crew, "Don't let your guard down. They may be weak, but they are extremely agile." Meanwhile, Oldman is pounding the kobolds with a juicy kick, so that they only have time to fly away from him in different directions. The team successfully manages the first attack. Da-sun even takes a little breather, and begins to believe that this time everything will go smoothly. His partners aren't such bad warriors. Except for one thing. Leon has been doing nothing all this time and just stood there with a sour face. "Hey, foreigner," Da-sun shouts to him. "Why did you stand there while we fought?" The whole team agrees with him, and the instructor assures them that he will take this moment into account when calculating the scores in the finals. Soon they come to the caves, lay out the grass, and Da-sun is about to set it on fire when he hears the foreigner's disgruntled voice from behind. "Is that all you can do?" In response, the guy is indignant and a small conflict ensues between them. "How can you rely on your experience when you have so little?" The foreigner doesn't relent. Da-sun sends him away and finally sets the grass on fire. Everyone is ready for the final battle with the kobolds. A crowd of anthropomorphic wolves fly out of the caves to the outside. Nayan is the first to attack from afar, and the others throw rocks at the kobolds with all their might. Dasun rejoices that it won't be long before they're done, and all that's left is to kill a couple of gnolls in the fields. But out of nowhere, a gnoll captain appears. A huge bear with meter-long claws and a creepy face. This is the boss of Soul Gate, and he is much stronger than the C-rank monsters. Immediately, the team is redistributed. Nayan and Oldman stay to fight the kobolds, while Dasun and Taehoon take on the boss. Dasun realizes that with his rank, going up against this monster is suicide. But there is no way out. They surround the gnoll, and the guy, seeing the fear in Taehoon's eyes, immediately gives him a powerful blow. The guy doesn't have time to react and falls to the ground. Dasun realizes that the situation could lead to death, but why is the examiner standing calmly? Because he promised to intervene in case of danger. Realizing that there is no one to hope for, Dasun desperately rushes to protect Taehoon. The beast strikes next, but Dasun manages to block it with his shield. With his last strength, he throws the gnoll's axe away, but a second blow follows. Taehoon's hope is futile, but he's too scared to pull himself together. But will Dasun be able to fend off the next one? The beast swings the axe with all his might, but suddenly his attack is stopped by the foreigner. In his elegant manner, with his fingers alone he restrains this gigantic blade. "Try again," he says to Dasun. The man is stunned, not realizing what's even going on here. But the Leon demands that he fight the gnoll again. After all, he was able to repel its attack once before. The gnoll and Dasun are puzzled in front of him, only that it was a battle to the death. Dasun declares this to Leon, to which he yells at him again and demands that he not cross him. The altercation ends as the gnoll prepares to attack again. "Take a shield, block the blow, and attack again," the Leon yells to him. Dasun manages to fend off the monster's attack. From the side, he again hears criticism and admonishment from the foreigner. "Don't bury your potential, focus, you can do better." From these words, faith in his own strength is born in Dasun's heart. He now has a strong feeling that he can overpower his opponent. Striking again, the guy concentrates all his strength in his hands, the blade of the axe meets the shield. And with great effort, Dasun throws the giant axe off. Rejoicing in his success, he completely forgets that the beast also has a left arm, which right at that moment powerfully nails the guy in the face. The result of this year's Dasun test is a D rank. After the battle, at the association's office, we see that the grandfather is actually the director of the Hunters Association, Oh Kong Hyuk, just using a mask to change his appearance. But, of course, Mr. Oppa recognizes him right away. They have a quiet conversation, during which Mr. Kong Hyuk tells him that he has someone in mind for him. Kong Hyuk is very excited after he sees the power he can use in the gate. With one finger, he destroys a gnoll captain. A monster. The director of the association promises Leon his support in founding the guild, and gives him advice on how to become famous on the battlefield in this world. He tells him about the gate that turned red because of a failed raid attempt. For a year now, no one has been able to clear them to get the Wisdom Stone, which is protected by the Red Gate's boss, a spinner psycho. A raid by the first squad of the KRR Guild enters the red level gate near the Jeju Sports Complex. We can see that this world is much more advanced than on Earth. Tall skyscrapers, complex architecture. A true cyberpunk. The team discuss their preparations, and prepare to face a very powerful opponent. First, they decide to climb a tall building to better assess the situation from there. At that moment, a mechanical gate creaks open somewhere. Already at the top, one of the team members, Ho Yol, reports to his captain that he hasn't found any enemies yet. There are no NPCs or monsters in this world, and even the dungeon boss, Spinner Psycho, is hiding unknown. The team is wary. The commander informs them that they should keep watch for now, and a team will soon be assembled to scout the area. Just as he has time to say this, a powerful beam from the street hits him in the head, and the captain falls dead to the floor. The team members are terrified and rush for cover, but at that moment a hail of shells falls on them. The building is blown to pieces. None of the guys were not prepared for such a strong enemy. They realize that this raid could be their last. The deputy commands them to retreat, as the building could collapse at any moment. Archer Hyo-ri runs first to check the path. There are no enemies outside, and it looks like the exit is safe. But instead, we see Hyo-ri's body first frozen in midair, and then cut by 100 strings stretched out in the city. The survivors make their way out, cutting the wires with their swords, at which point the spinner Psycho is already watching them. From afar, the robot strikes again with its powerful light whip. This time, what remains of the raid is their deputy. "Show yourself, you piece of shit," he shouts in rage, and at that moment, out of the dust, he sees a robot moving towards him. A moment, and he is already entangled in the deadly weapon. There are no more survivors. For a long time, the raids on the gate stopped. But today, a group of people entered the gate at the Jeju Sports Complex. They are the ones who expect to obtain the Wisdom Stone. In this group, we see the top guild Golden Lion. Its guild master is Jem Chul, S rank, his deputy Young Ha, a rank, and their 47 guild members. A mercenary group of 48 members and their leader is Dae Sun, almost S rank. Also, Han Hari of the Korean Association, who respectfully serves barley tea to some unknown hunter. At the 4th Raid Team headquarters in Jeju Gate, preparations for the attack are underway. Hari is worried that things might not go according to plan. She asks Leon not to interfere in the battle, to which the latter actively agrees. Afterwards, he starts the old song about the duties of a king and a night king. He claims that first of all he must be a reliable shield to intervene and protect his subordinates in case of danger. So if a sword is picked up by the king, it's a disgrace to the knight, and a sign that the situation is very serious. And what a coincidence, looks like I'll have to intervene again, instead of these pathetic weaklings, Leon says capriciously. In response, Hari insists that this time the raid is being led by a Jem Chul of S rank and a very powerful mage. He concludes pathetically that these hunters haven't seen real war. From the side, we see a spinner Psycho approaching the group. At this point, Leon reprimands the hunters for having so little information about the enemy that they are already set on victory, while no one has analyzed the monster's behavior, and as such they have no plan. A barrage of projectiles prevents messers from completing their thought. Their entire headquarters is suddenly attacked by a psychic spinner. In parallel, we are shown the memories of the robot, in which we see a woman giving him the last order to eliminate all unaware beings that have arrived in the city. On the battlefield, the hunters run for cover with all their legs. And the robot is already analyzing the situation and preparing a suitable plan to eliminate the entire raid. He takes one of the groups of people in his crosshairs and hits them with hundreds of combat shells. The rest of the raid can only watch in horror from their shelter. So the raid is reduced by 23% in a few seconds. At that moment, Guildmaster Jem Chul flies out from behind the robot with a huge sledgehammer in his hands, and hits the spinner Psycho with all his might. In response, it only squeaks in surprise. The first damage appears in its hull. The robot prepares to attack Jem Chul, but right at that moment, Deputy Wang Yongha attacks him from above. With all her lion-like fury, she sends the robot to rest with one powerful blow of her iron gloves. Before the robot has time to recover, the mage joins the attack. But a quick analysis is enough, and the spinner Psych connects external resources, machine guns, placed throughout the city. Taking advantage of the moment, he escapes, in parallel shooting off the opponents with machine guns. Dae Sun's mage has to use space distortion as a shield for the entire raid. The robot instantly calculates the angle at which the barrier can be breached, and one of the raid members drops dead. The group realizes that because of the distortion, the advantage is now on the robot's side, and decides to launch an attack as soon as the shield disappears. "Stand down," yells Jem Chul at the last second before the attack. The team now sees that they are surrounded on all sides by hundreds of razor-sharp woods. It turns out the robot wasn't running away, it was trapping them. Now they realize that gathering them all in one place was a mistake. And the spinner Psycho is ready to launch his final attack with a powerful electronic cannon. But then the squad hears the clatter of hooves and a horse appears on the battlefield, effortlessly tearing through the steel wire. Leon Dragonia respectfully greets his battle companion and saddles him as a knight should, bewildering the entire troop. He then gives out a fiery speech, giving his royal permission to fight for him. Jem Chell and Tae Sung prostrate themselves from the cringe. After briefly analyzing the situation, Spinner Psycho is ready to attack again. He has decided that the creature in front of him has 0 threat level. In response, Leon Dragonia pulls a huge golden spear out of the portal and commands the horse to rush in to attack. In response to the shots from the robot side, the protagonist yells, "Knight! You're not supposed to fight with ranged weapons." The two powerful attacks converge and there is a huge explosion. Parts of the robot fly off. The Spinner Psyche's computational artificial intelligence malfunctioned. It was impossible to calculate the logic of the phenomenon that appeared before him. But a few seconds were enough for the robot to determine the nature of the attack and its weaknesses. They flew at each other again, spear against machine. The blow aimed at protagonist must be critical, even with successful blocking. Shells fly out of the cannons and Spinner Psycho misses. It was a credit to Leon, who used a skill that only the strongest warriors of mankind possess. A way to fulfill the laws of the universe. A divine law shining on the end of a spear, capable of repelling any ranged attack, but only once. The spear protagonist reaches its target, and after such a divine attack, the robot needs a serious repair. So it quickly decides to leave the battlefield. We again see the robot's memories of its mistress. She calls him Yappy, and asks him to protect the place where the Wisdom Stone is located, and not to let anyone get near it. The robot is replacing damaged elements in its shelter. He can no longer use heavy arms, as well as making new projectiles and modeling new weapons from the enemies. After a while, the Spinner Psyche is ready to resume the mission. Meanwhile, at the Jeju Sports Complex, we see a protagonist-ling squad of hunters in Block B in the center of town. To their misfortune, they encounter the Spinner Psycho. The spinner reports all the details to the team and commands a plan of action. But a warm liquid suddenly splashed on his face makes him turn around. A monstrous picture appears before his eyes. All his comrades have been killed by the fishing lines stretched by the robot. In desperation, he lunges at the robot with his sword, but is just as trapped as his comrades. Out of the shadows, screaming in terror, the sole survivor runs away from the robot. Unnoticed, he finds himself on the lawn of a clean and well-maintained cemetery. The robot steps on him, and the guy desperately begs for mercy. Suddenly, instead of attacking, we see the robot succumb to the memories of its mistress, and from them we realize that in this cemetery are buried all the inhabitants of this city. The robot then begins to flounder, conducting its own analysis of the situation, and cracking the arguments and logic that dictates it destroy all the invaders. He manages to suppress the logic and retreats, leaving the guy alive. The robot's last priority is to protect the people of the city. Even after they're dead, we again see the robot in the shelter charging its power and calculating the probability of defeating each of the enemies. At that moment, a Mr. Dragonia appears at his back and offers to have some fun. Leon Dragonia honors chivalry. It is no exaprotagonistration to say that he is the very embodiment of chivalry. He believes that only cowards ambush and fight fair. Of course, there is no guarantee that the enemy will fight fairly. But that's no reason to abandon the code of chivalry. The epitome of chivalry will not let anything break his will. That's what makes him the strongest, makes him the chosen one. I guess I shouldn't expect a fair fight from a robot, Leon utters. Dozens of large-caliber machine gun shells fly back at him, but all to no avail. The law of the universe blesses the arrow shield, and Leon remains unharmed. Jumping from place to place, the robot calculates the angle of attack to bypass the defenses and finally attacks again. But Leon only grins, and with a powerful kick of his foot against the ground, smashes the asphalt, throwing it upwards so that it creates a decent shield for him. Beep! The robot makes a perplexed noise, to which a spear flies back at him, which he manages to dodge at the last moment. Meanwhile, Leon saddles his horse again, regains his spear in no time and flies back to the attack. The robot somehow manages to avoid a direct hit. "Stallion," says Mr. Stallion to his horse, "it looks like they're playing hide and seek with us." The spinner Psycho retreats in confusion, but Leon continues to pursue him on his horse with a golden spear in his hand. The robot finally manages to counterattack, not without the help of his divine horse, dodges the attack. Then Spinner Psycho jumps up and fires machine gun fire from above. Leon, on horseback, continues to deftly evade the attacks. Stallion commands Messers, and the horse begins to climb into the air, over the splintering shards of concrete. A few deft jumps, and now Leon is taller than his opponent. Then the robot makes an attack with its remaining ammunition, but everything is absorbed by the divine shield. "In the name of the Lionheart," yells Leon before his crushing attack. A powerful explosion destroys everything around him and the robot takes critical damage. At the very end, he remembers the order that he received given long ago. What has been sharpened must never see the light of day again. And then he starts the process of destroying objects throughout the area. When Spinner Psycho awakened, he was immediately sent to protect the inhabitants from invasion. Hordes of demons and monsters were coming from the portals to this world, so people created a squad of robots to defeat the enemy. And after the victory, they became universal heroes. The story of super robots who saved the city from a desperate situation was just a good fairy tale for the townspeople who had lost faith. And the Spinner Psychos became a symbol of hope. And Iron Knights, so again and again they defended the city under the leadership of the Commander-in-Chief, until there were no more to defend. And when only one battle robot remained, he received his final orders: defend the city. This thing can't even exist. Therefore, no one was ever able to get close to this thing. For an infinite amount of time, this robot prepared and defended his city, setting traps, making ammunition, and inventing complex strategies. Leon found the half-destroyed robot just next to the Wisdom Stone, which caused the arrow's shield to keep disappearing. "This is not something that should exist," says Mr. Leon, and draws his divine sword from the portal. But behind him, a damaged robot is beeping and desperately trying to continue the fight. Seeing the robot desperately following his orders, Leon is overcome with respect for his opponent. A knight of loyalty and selflessness. All beings who have lived in this city should thank you for your service. He raises his sword upwards, the entire room immediately filling with golden light. "Sir Spinner Psycho, I solemnly declare, your task has been successfully accomplished." After saying that, he unleashes his attack on the magic item and completely destroys it. "Thank you, Yuppie," is what the robot hears at the end. Leon walks down the hallway with Oh Kong-hyuk, the director of the association. They discuss the outcome of the gate closing and the destroyed Wisdom Stone. The protagonist explains that this thing was created by a demon and sent to Earth to tempt people. At first, the stone grants the wish, but demands a huge payment in return. He seduces people with thoughts of eternal life, and not much time passes before he loses his humanity and turns into a demon himself. Together they decide to inform the government as soon as possible to find and destroy all the other stones that have somehow gotten into this world. Next, they enter a laboratory where the remains of a spinner psychic lie amongst a multitude of scientists. Director Oh Kong-hyuk asks Mr. Jeng what he's going to do with it. Since he was a noble knight, a funeral should be held. "And I'll pray that he passes quietly into the feast hall of the gods," says Leon. He takes out his divine goblet to bless the robot one last time. The light from the goblet spills onto the robot, and to everyone's surprise, the robot begins to move. It beeps and clicks its claws and feet. A divine power had created a miracle, and now it has become a source of power for the robot. In no time he puts his parts in order, And here on the place where just lay the remains of the spinner psychic, stands his new mini-version. Leon realizes that the goddess herself chose the robot. And then he pulls out a divine sword, makes a powerful swing, and from this miracle in the air appears his goddess Ariana. Everyone present sensed that the girl from the bright light was not human and collapsed to their knees before her. "Dear goddess Ariana," Leon bowed respectfully before her. "Lenhart, my first knight, tell me what this is," the goddess asks him. "This is Sir Spinner Psycho, a noble knight and role model worthy of your patronage." The goddess examines the robot and remains displeased that he has not dedicated the glory to her. Leon then stands up for the Psycho Spinner and assures the goddess that if it weren't for him, the robot would be a fitting king of Lionheart. Ariana favors the knight and addressing the robot says, "Steel Knight from another world. Will you follow the light, chanting justice, by joining my knight's army? You are full of nobility and knowledge, but your heart is as pure as a child's. Help my knight to stop the evil in this world, and then you too will become a knight." The robot beeped questioningly at Leon, and the latter backed him up with a look. Turning to the goddess, Spinner Psycho, filled with pride and willingness to fight for his new goddess, actively beeps back at her. The people around them, along with the goddess, are lost. Then the robot rearranges its signal into words that humans can understand. "Demon. Attack. Good plan." The goddess relents and says in response, "Well, Sir Spinner Psycho, as long as you are loyal and serve my first knight, I grant you my patronage." And after these words, the robot is covered by a pillar of divine blessing. This Grail knight stood before light and justice. At this time, in the office of the head of the U.S. Magic Tower, Reynold Sherman is on his knees protagonisting for forgiveness at the Magic Stone. "Fool, failing in such a simple task. The stone resents. I have trained you in wisdom and truth, and you still fail me." The head of the American branch of the Magic Tower howls for forgiveness. "I couldn't change anything." That Leon surviving was a big surprise to us. After Stone hears the name protagonist, his anger is replaced by excitement. He demands his servant to turn on the news immediately. On the television, we see Leon Dragonya's performance. Seeing the young man, the magic stone is horrified, which even his servant sees. "I wash my hands of you," squeals the stone. "I will do nothing. No way." And with those words, it leaves its physical shell, leaving old Reynold Sherman in despair and loneliness. Sir Spinner Psycho will now be registered as a member of the Protagonist Guild. Together with the robot, they leave the lab. Suddenly we see Leon coughing up blood. The Grail Knight's advancement in the lands devoid of divinity has taken too much of his strength. The goddess watches him from the sidelines and berates herself for not being there to help her knight. "I am grateful for your loyalty. But even if this land is devoid of divinity, it is the fault of me and the other gods for not getting there sooner. Rest well, trust in your gods and wait for them." In the pantheon of gods, Ariana addresses the other deities, brothers and sisters. "We must help our follower." At the time the king turned 121, the world had come to an end and only one knight remained. He released his divinity into the world around him, and channeled it into his own heart. So the gods inhabited the heart of the saint and watched the king slay monsters for the next 180 years. They allowed one man to carry the burden of the whole world. Therefore, all the gods of the pantheon owed Leon an unpayable debt. "How is the condition of this child?" asked Demera, the goddess of life. Ariana told her that her knight's health was not good. In response, Pito, deity of war and fire, pounded his fist furiously on the stone armrest of his throne. "Where has the king of the lion's heart gone? Shining in the majesty of the gods. Have some respect, war." Ariana yanked him away. "He fought for us for more than 200 years straight and won." "I know I did," shouted Pitos. "That's why I'm angry. At myself. The time has come for us to take action too, my brothers and sisters," Ariana commanded majestically. "I can no longer watch my knight suffer in pain." Then the god of steel and craft, Hedo, offered his idea. Just as Demeter behaved in the fields, The other gods should also bless something on earth related to them to bring faith to this society. After the events in the fields, the gods saw that people in this world communicate and interact thanks to a thing called the internet. Therefore, Hedo that the gods use it for their own purposes. There's a little commotion in the Korean association. Someone under the nickname Pantheon TV started posting videos on YouTube spreading information about the divine power of rice from the fields of the Hanam plain. The broadcast, Pray Before and After Meals, in the name of the goddess Demera, has already garnered 1,100 viewers. The channel has already posted more than 2,000 videos with clickbait titles. Who created it? Perplexed executive Kim Jin-soo. All suspicions fall on Leon Dragonia. But for someone like him to go online? Assistant Han Hari isn't strong with computers either. So to find out the truth, Shin-soo goes to meet Leon. Meanwhile, in the protagonist's penthouse, behind closed doors, the robot spinner Psycho is tapping the keys of a laptop enthusiastically. Description creation complete. Proceeding to download. At that moment, Hari peeks into the room, and then wonders to the robot if her laptop will be free soon. But the robot only beeped and went back to its task. Phase 2 has been launched. Network hacking has begun. Manager Han Hari looked at it carefully, and decided that Sir Yuppie was just playing around. Naju Fields was now temporarily home to the Pantheon Guild's branch. At the door of the house shouting, "Your Majesty, we need to destroy the video immediately." Manager Kim comes flying in. Here he learns that the former killing machine behind all the videos is Sir Yappy. Manager Kim explains that the videos need to be destroyed. After all, when its miraculous properties become known to everyone, the whole world will come to get it. Naju's fields will be overrun with thieves and it will be impossible to control. As soon as the food control authorizes the sowing, the association will put all possible efforts to help you, says the manager. Please wait until then. In response, the king assures him that there is no need to worry. The divine crops cannot be stolen by anyone. At night, several vehicles arrive at Naju's fields. It's the Snake Squad of the Korean branch Demonic People's Association, Hitman Group. An unknown person has sent them a mission. Save the seeds and completely burn the rice field in Naju. The mercenaries are surprised that such a valuable field is guarded by nothing and no one. This assignment sounds too simple for them. Bring gasoline canisters, their leader commands, while most of the group has already gone to the field to set it on fire. In complete silence, they walk through the field at night like true thieves. Suddenly, one of them notices a human silhouette not far away. But it turns out to be just a scarecrow. It looks so creepy that the mercenary who noticed it first involuntarily succumbs to fear. Hanam, look over there, shouts the same mercenary again to his captain. The squad notices a few more scarecrows. Aren't there too many of them here? Idiot, how can you be a demonic man when you're shaking a few scarecrows? Hanam reprimands him, stop being distracted and check the wind direction. We need to set as much on fire as possible, in the least amount of time. The field is filled with gasoline, all that's left is to set the fire. Man Su and Jin Dae, where did those two go? Hanam shouts, but instead of them, only the scarecrows are left in the field, which were now frighteningly close to the mercenaries. One of them, with maces instead of arms, jumps up sharply behind Hanam. Fuck. He shouts and destroys the scarecrow with a single blow. They're really moving. He yells in horror, these aren't regular scarecrows. They're monsters. And we see an ominous aura flying over the field around the armed scarecrows. The bandits squeal with fear. How can there be so many monsters in a place that doesn't even have a dungeon entrance? Only now does Hanam realize why the task initially seemed strange to him. They run from the monsters back to the road and see a silo that holds grain. Their leader exults, if the stories about the rice are true, they will be rich. He commands his subordinates to load the rice into cars. Since the monsters only attack in the field, the silage must be safe. But he has only to take a step toward the silo when he is blown up by a mine that lay beneath the ground. They buried mines around the silo? But who even thought of that? puzzled one of the mercenaries, as at the same moment the familiar beep comes from behind their backs. Why is the Jeju Gate boss here? The hunters shout. Record of authorized people confirmed. Spinner Psycho pronounces, exterminate. In the morning, all the criminals were caught and bound, and a sign hung beside them. The doctrine of life and fertility 1. From the first harvest one must create a doll in the shape of a goddess and sacrifice it. 2. Do not defecate in the field. We have fertilizer. 3. Make scarecrows with hats and clothes and set them up. 4. Sing during the harvest time. It is good if the song includes words of gratitude to the goddess. 5. Even if busy, you must not skip meals. And at the bottom, one phrase in particular was highlighted. Most important, thieves die. Thus the snake troop was successfully arrested. Most important, thieves die. Thus the snake troop was successfully arrested.